all officially and formally. We are recording this session and we will post it online on our YouTube in the coming week. This is episode 3 of The Shift. I'm going to pass the baton over to my colleague Alia Gurmali, who's the head of strategy at Fashion Revolution India. Today she's going to be joined by our guest speakers, Shubhika from Papa Don't Preach and Presha Bajaj. And we've also got our colleague Shruti, who is Shruti Singh, head of policy up in Delhi, and the wonderful Tawfiq Bhai, who's a Karigar, I believe, that works with our esteemed speakers. And I will allow Alia now to step in, tell you a little bit about Fashion Revolution and the topic of discussion for today. Thank you all. And don't forget to keep asking questions in the chat box. We will try and get through some of them later.
Thank you, Sukhi. Hi, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. This is the third edition of our series, The Shift. The Shift was started by Fashion Revolution India about 6 weeks into the lockdown, COVID-19 lockdown. We had just finished Fashion Revolution Week at the end of April. So Fashion Revolution is a global organization. It's a not-for-profit. It was set up in response to the Rana Plaza tragedy in 2013, where over 1,000 workers, garment workers, died in a factory fire. Fashion Revolution was formed by 2 ladies in London, Ursula de Castro and Carrie Summers, and it has grown now into over 100 countries. We are volunteer-based. And we work with everybody, all stakeholders in the fashion industry, from the producers to the designers, to you guys, the customers. We try to highlight certain issues around fashion. We look at 2 aspects of it mostly. One is the human capital side. What is the impact of fashion on the lives of people who are involved with creating fashion? And we look at the environmental aspect of it. What is the environmental fallout of fashion? We started The Shift because we saw that there were some very interesting responses which labels were getting into as a way to fix what was going wrong with the lockdown. The supply chains were obviously shut. Workers had to be either sent home back to their villages, or they were being, even if they were staying in the cities, work had to stop. Retail spaces closed, events were cancelled, and the world came to a halt. And somewhere along the way, we came across, I think you guys, if you tuned in for the first episode, we were talking with No Nasties. No Nasties had come up with the concept of doing the pre-buy local campaign. And one of the other campaigns which caught our eye is Care for Karigars. So that's why we invited Shubhika from Papa Don't Preach and Presha Bajaj from Presha to come and explain the campaign to us, to tell us a little bit about the labels, to tell us about the need for the campaign, to tell us, what is happening, what are the people who work for them happening, what is going on in their enterprise. So I would like to first invite Shubhika to just start the conversation. Tell us a little bit about Papa Don't Preach. Tell us about, what is your market? What is your setup? Who are you?
Okay.
Give us a background.
Yeah, who am I? I think that is an important question. I recently started my personal page, separate from Papa Don't Preach, and I was like, who am I? Because outside of Papa Don't Preach, the identity is a little tricky. So Papa Don't Preach is, I think, now 8 years old. We started as a streetwear label when I came back from London, but soon we realized we needed to move into occasion wear because in India, Indian sells. And it is important to kind of respect the country that you're working in and the people who you are creating, garments for. So we currently employ about 55 hand embroidery karigars, 20 tailors, 2 masters, 3 machine embroidery tailors. So it's I think a team of about 75, 80 right now. Outside of that, we also have job workers who take stuff from us and take it to their karkhanas and work. So internally we have 75, but we are linked to about 40, 50 more karigars. So why this started was, obviously fashion being the evil. It was impacted. It's the second most impacted, I believe, after the travel industry. I always say that, we weren't really caught in the blind. This was coming to us. This was coming to fashion. People were already talking about, when we were putting up posts on Instagram, people were asking us, is it vegan? Is it cruelty free? Are you guys sustainable? And, those questions were being asked. So I think everybody was being held accountable towards the issues that have kind of been brought in the forefront now because of this crisis. It started off, this care for Karigar started off obviously because as the lockdown kind of intensified and it just kept getting elongated, uh, the suffering of I wouldn't want to call them migrant laborers because they've been in Bombay for over 20-30 years now. They've made this their home. This is very much their city. But I think where we kind of went wrong was that we did not make it feel like it was their city, and they wanted to rush back home to their families, and they each support I think about anywhere between 9 to 20. So if you ask Tawfiq Bhai, who's here with us, he has about 20 family members in his home in Rasulabad. So these were large number of people that they were supporting, and now because obviously the business kind of came to a halt right from Feb. As the news spread, even though the lockdown happened much later in March, the business, the orders, the clients walk in, and all of that stopped in Feb, which is pretty severe for us because May, June weddings are pretty important to us. That's a wedding season that we cater to in Feb. So that kind of just went out of the window, and then we came into this lockdown, and suddenly there's no business, deliveries can't be made, orders can't be met with, and salaries needed to be paid because all these guys depended on us. um, so yeah, so what started this off was obviously these facts were in front of us, but Tawfiq Bhai, who managed to reach back, he's been with us for 11 years. He reached back to Rasulabad and he called me and he said, Madam ji, salary humko mil rahi hai and we are all taken care of, but there are so many people in my village that I'm breaking all my savings, all the money I've made from working with you all these years, I'm kind of breaking into my piggy bank and I'm giving it to them. And he was like, even if you send thousand rupees, I'll be able to do something for them. That's when I thought that we need to be able to extend our help and our reach to people outside of just us. And the first person I could think of was Kresha. And why Kresha is also another story, because she has a beautiful idea of kind of educating the karigars. I just before the lockdown, everything happens for a reason, and I think before the lockdown she organized a very intimate dinner for all of us to kind of get together, and in that she expressed that I really believe and I really want that the art of karigari should be preserved, and these people should be encouraged to pass it on to generations, because it's such a beautiful art that it's disappearing the world over. And unless we give them the respect, unless we give them the security of a future, safe future, and respect for their craft, this is going to die out, and we're going to just be like any other country. So I think with that in my mind, it was really clear in my mind that I wanted to meet with Kresha and take this idea forward. But then this happened. So the first person I could think of was Kresha. And I told my team, if Kresha doesn't do it, we'll do it alone. But I'm not going to do it with anybody else, because the intent here was 100% for the karigars and care for karigars. So that's how this started. Yeah. I think you're on mute, Alia.
I'm going to use this as an opportunity to ask Kresha to step in. Kresha, why don't you tell us a little bit about your label and what exactly, what is the scale of operations that you were running? What was it? What was your position in terms of, like Shubhika was mentioning, her orders were dropping in February, things like that. Just give us a little bit of the history to the run up, and what was it? What were you going through, and what happened when the lockdown was announced for you?
So I actually launched my label, and I started with a brand called Koesh, which was primarily an e-com brand. And after I got married and I made all my clothes, I realized my love for embroidery and ancient techniques of the craft. And that is how I kind of, the business, translated from Koesh, which was a e-com, edgy, black spikes and studs, to this very whimsical brand. And what we are is we are a contemporary luxury brand, that really focuses on Indian craftsmanship with, for the modern global woman. And we work with third generation artisans, and we really try to honor the principles of couture while keeping the spirit of bread alive. Um, and in our atelier, we employ third generation karigars in various fields, like embroidery karigars who are incredibly skilled in traditional Indian techniques as well as embroidery, Zardozi Ari, as well as khaka masters, tailors, pattern graders. And so in terms of the amount of people that we have with us, we actually have 3 brands under the umbrella. So it's women's wear, menswear, as well as uniforms. And we employ over 150 people directly, and as Shubhika mentioned as well, indirectly through job workers, over 500. And you had also mentioned about the workspace. So the way the workspace is designed is my design team and our artisans, which are cardigans, we all sit within the same space. And I think that's really important, because you get to interact and you get to connect with the people you're working with. So it's a very family oriented environment, and we literally do everything together. Um, and when this started in terms of operation, so right now I have just one store. We have a flagship store, which is in Mumbai, and we had so many plans of opening different stores and of doing really fun pop-ups and shows internationally, but I think everything came to a standstill. And we're primarily a touch and feel brand. Um, and we don't really have an online presence. So it was, I think it just completely caught us off guard, and we didn't know what to do or where to go when this happened, because we didn't have, an online model. Um, so it was a little stressful for the team, but I think my team is amazing at managing stress. Um, and we just focused on different ways to channel our energy. Of course, now creating something online is in the works, but it's been a little challenging because we like to control the entire narrative. So that entire journey should be like a story, from the second you walk out of your car to you entering the store, the fragrance that you get. We've chosen particular fragrances for every section of the store. So we have peony and blush suite for the bridal suite. We have English pear and fuchsia for the pret, which is a little more fun. So creating that entire journey, up till your menu, what you get served when you sit, the bridal studio gets completely closed off just to you and your family. Trying to create that online right now is a little bit of a challenge, but that is what we're focusing on. Yeah.
But bridal Zoom calls, huh? But okay, so all right. So retail space, obviously, for a long time is something that is going to, take a couple of months, I guess, to figure out. Tell us a little bit now about when you girls devised the Care for Karigars campaign. How did the thought come up of doing, instead of fundraising, putting out products, attaching it to a pre-sale, something for the future? Actually, why don't you just I don't know if the listeners know, so if you can just walk them through the fundraising process that you put together.
So I think it was, I was very certain that, because of all that was happening, we started on 1st of May. So by then, a lot of charities had kind of already started putting, so many calls to action, and so many charities were doing amazing work. So I realized, even from what I was experiencing, that I did not want to guilt trip people into feeling like, they needed to donate, because when I was in touch with my girls, and a lot of my girls live away from homes, live away from families, and, they were all here with roommates, and suddenly trying to divide work and understand how to do work in that format, which was very stressful. So I realized everybody is going through stress at every level, big, small, or everybody's impacted equally. Um, so we were very clear that we want, when somebody does contribute to our fund towards care for karigars, we want to give something back, for their care. And it's actually twofold. So when we do resume offices in whatever capacity that we will be able to, there will be work, there will be orders for these guys to come back to the job workers, even if we are paying the guys on our payrolls, the guys who are sitting, somewhere really far away and wondering, will they at all get work? And I think Kresha has also told me very interesting things where her karigars are calling her up and saying, please give us any work. We're fed up of sitting just, empty, because they're just used to working so much and they're used to creating beautiful things, and suddenly they're just like, there's no work. So they're not enjoying this extended holiday. So when they do come back, they have these beautiful bags. So we luckily had a very strong online business model already. We used to do shoes and bags and accessories under 15,000, which is what would move online. So we already had these bags, and we knew these belt bags were our best sellers. So we picked and identified our best sellers. We went back into our sales reports and identified this one. And when I spoke to Kresha, and this is just reflective of how hardworking she really is. She was like, I really want to do it, but I don't have any product at all that I can, because she's hardcore bridal couture. So it's everything is hand embroidered, and it's fine embroidery. It's really, really fine and very detailed. So I think Kresha she's provided housing to a lot of her master Gs and hand embroiderers very close to where she lives, right opposite, in fact, in Bandra, I think. So they were really excited to take this as a challenge, and they created this cape. And suddenly she's like, I'm getting it short, we'll put it up, and it started falling into place, and we had these two beautiful products. And we're just so we're exactly the opposite in terms of aesthetics. When you look at Papa Don't Preach embroidery, it's like 3D, and it's you cannot not notice all the things that are on your lehenga. With Kresha, you have to really go in and look at all the fine work. So that's why we were able to put two really different products. So we were covering like every kind of a taste spectrum. So if somebody liked it really like funky, fun, and statement, they would go for Papa Don't Preach. If you liked it clean and simple, they would go for Kresha. So in this way, we were able to give options to people from whatever we had with us ready. And I think the response has been beautiful. Kresha, if you want to just add to that, I'll keep talking.
No, the response has been really beautiful, and I just wanted to add to one of the reasons why I was so excited about this was because the product was in play. I was getting calls from our team members and our karigars, and like Shubhika mentioned, the ones that live opposite me currently, they were calling and they're like, Madam, can we come? Your garden is there, the mali is not coming. Can we come? We'll water the plants, we'll do this, we'll do that. And they're very enthusiastic to work. And what's also really sad is a lot of karigars have, whoever have gone back to their villages, they have had to, start doing alternate jobs. My head embroidery guy has started farming, and he's telling me, he's like, oh, madam, I don't know if I'll come back. I might just want to start farming. And I said, just a month back, I spoke to you and you told me about how you want to teach this craft to your kids, and your brother wants to teach this craft to his kids. And he's like, no, madam, I think I'm just going to, be here and do farming.
They're scared to even come back.
Yeah, definitely. So that is why I think having the product is so much more important, because that's a big part of allowing us to keep the craft alive. But in terms of how much we have raised right now, collectively, it's 35 lakhs, and that is just amazing. And, we're really hoping to keep this initiative alive way past the lockdown as well. We're going to be discussing and figuring out different ways to do this. And like Shubhika mentioned, the thought had initially come up about wanting to create a school and a training center for karigars, and not just our karigars, but any karigars and all karigars in general. craft and art is really being replaced by machinery today,
Yeah.
you know. And people are kind of moving to that, to new technology, to new innovations, and we are not being able to really appreciate um, craft and heritage craft that much, because like I mentioned, machines are replacing everything. And also, something I read recently which really got me thinking was, we had royals and kings and queens and noblemen who were real patrons of this craft. um, and now we don't really have people to do that, because fast fashion has came up with such a bang, and people were turning to that and stopping to look at or stopping to invest in slow fashion and investment pieces, that this craft continued to die, and less of the youth wanted to learn this from our forefathers, because it is an inherited craft. um, so yes, we want to keep the initiative alive, and also look at opening a training school, training
Yeah.
center, whatever we
To
can
all
do.
karigars, yeah.
Yeah, for all
I
Karigas.
remember Alia, in our chat, you had asked me, the way forward. And after this initiative, what now? After Care for Karigar fundraising, y'all reach your target and what? And you asked me, is a labor union an option for Karigars? To that I said I'm not sure, but what I am sure is that humans as a species, we all love to grow, we all love to learn at every level. Even in this lockdown, if you do something new, probably cook or just learn to clean something really well, it's a good day because you've learned something and you've grown. And I think the only way for us to be able to increase the salaries that these guys are now drawing is for us to teach them and elevate their art. So I think, because once you do equip them with that, so even if they're not with us, they're probably going to another place, but they can rightfully ask for something, okay, and it is their right to ask, because that's the kind of work that they can produce. So I think, if not unionizing, but definitely educating them, teaching them, and teaching this as a more respectable and a respectful art with a secure future, probably introduce healthcare and things like that would benefit them to kind of stay put and learn and do better work, and hence ask for better salaries, I think is the way forward. Because when we were studying abroad, I studied in London, I think so did Kresha. When I did intern there, I saw that the pattern cutters and all were young girls like me, and I was like, wow, because for us it's just master G's and they're like pretty old guys, but their pattern cutting, hand embroidery, even everything is done by educated people, and hence labor there is way more expensive than what it is here. So I think education is the way forward, even for karigars, to progress.
Education and also, I guess, representation. So let us ask Tawfiq Bhai to join the call now. Shubika, if you could just...
Yeah. Tawfiq Bhai?
जी
हाँ, तौफिक भाई कैसे हो?
बढ़िया, फर्स्ट क्लास मैडम जी। आप लोग सभी लोग कैसे हो?
हम सब बहुत ठीक है यहाँ पे। और ईद कैसी रही आपकी?
बहुत अच्छी ईद रही।
ठीक है, तो यहाँ पे जो सब लोग आए हैं, यहाँ पे काफी लोग हैं, 60-70 लोग हैं इस कॉल पे जो आपको देख सकते हैं।
अभी बन गए।
सॉरी?
100 people.
100 लोगों से ज्यादा हो गए अभी, और ये रिकॉर्ड भी हो रहा है, ये आगे जाके यूट्यूब पे भी जाएगा। तो सब लोग यहाँ पे जो हैं वो आपसे बात करना चाहते हैं और जानना चाहते हैं कि आपको जो गांव में सिचुएशन कैसी है, आप कहाँ से हैं, आप क्या काम करते हैं, आप कितने सालों से काम कर रहे हैं, और आपको क्या लगता है कि जब ये लॉकडाउन, जो भी हमारी ये सिचुएशन है, जब हटेगी, तो सारे कारीगरों के मन में क्या है, अभी क्या उनको बॉम्बे आना है वापस काम के लिए, कि Alia, is there any other question you want me to ask him?
One at a time. Let's start off with आपकी कहानी बता दीजिए Tawfiq।
हाँ, आप अपने बारे में बताओ। आपकी वो फोटो मैंने दिखाई 13 साल की उम्र वाली, थोड़ी आप वहां से शुरू करें जब से आपने सीखा है ये।
मेरी 13 साल की उम्र से मैं मलियाबाद में काम सीखने गया था। रसूलाबाद से मलियाबाद काम सीखने गया था, और वहां से काम सीख के 15 साल की उम्र में मैं बम्बई आ गया। फिर कुछ दिन तक कारीगर बम्बई में कारीगरी किया बम्बई के अंदर। फिर सुविका मैम से 2009 में मैं ज्वाइन हुआ आके, तो 2020 चल रहा, 11 साल तक सुविका मैम से मैं ज्वाइन रहा। काम करता रहा इनके साथ में। और सुविधा मैम ने बहुत हेल्प की, हम लोगों की भी सबकी हेल्प की, कारीगरों को फैमिली की तरीके से रखा, हर कारीगर से अच्छे से बात करना, अच्छे से ख्याल करना, उनका दवा कुछ परेशानी हो उस परेशानी में रखना ख्याल।
थोड़ा
इस
अपने
तरीके से हम
कारीगरी
कारीगरों
के
की सबकी
अपने काम के बारे कारीगरी में आपको किस चीज में सबसे ज्यादा दिलचस्पी है? आई जस्ट टेल यू कि ये जो शुरू हुए थे ये कारीगरी से शुरू हुए थे, फिर इन्होंने अपना कारखाना शुरू किया और उसके बाद अब पापा डोंट
जी
प्रीच पे पूरा एम्ब्रॉयडरी सेटअप पूरा यूनिट मैनेज करते हैं। सो ही इज एट अ मैनेजर लेवल राइट नाउ।
जी जी
तो आपको ये आपके काम के बारे में जानना चाहते हैं, क्या आप आगे अपने बच्चों को सिखाना चाहोगे? गांव में लोग और सीखना चाहते हैं कि नहीं ये काम?
ये काम गांव में अब ज्यादा लोग नहीं सीखना चाहते हैं, और हम गांव में जो है थोड़ी जाहिलियत का माहौल कुछ ज्यादा ही है, तो वो कुछ पढ़ाना चाहते हैं बच्चों को कि आगे पढ़े बच्चे, कुछ आगे लिख लें, तरक्की करें, देश के लिए कुछ करें। तो अब ये काम के लिए बहुत कम लोग सीखने की सोच रही है कि ये पढ़ने लिखने का आगे सोच रहे हैं कि पढ़े लिखे कुछ आगे बढ़े, कुछ और करें, किसी कारोबार में बढ़े आगे।
आपका क्या
और
कहना
कुछ
है?
लोगों को भी काम,
आपके बच्चों को, आप अपने बच्चों के बारे में बताइए, क्या आप
हमारे
चाहोगे वो
हमारे
बच्चे
बच्चों
भी?
को, अपने बच्चों को मैं यही काम सिखाऊंगा और उनको पढ़ाऊंगा भी। मैं तो नहीं पढ़ पाया मगर अपने बच्चों को आगे पढ़ाने की कोशिश करूंगा कि हमारी जो जिंदगी कट गई वो बच्चों में ना कटे, उनकी अच्छी सी जिंदगी कटे, पढ़ लिख के अच्छे से रहें। और कारीगरों को भी मैं काम सिखा रहा हूँ, थोड़े बहुत कारीगर तैयार किए हुए 25 सागिरत लोग हैं जो काम सीखे, उनसे सीख के वो अपना अपना काम किया, अपना जॉब किया, और कारखाने भी किए कुछ लोगों ने, तो वो भी आगे थोड़ा तरक्की पे है, कुछ कर रहे हैं दूसरों के लिए भी। और थोड़े कारीगर लोग हैं तो उनको तैयार कर रहा हूँ काम के लिए।
तो आप लोग रेडी हो बॉम्बे आके वापस काम शुरू करने के लिए, कि जैसा यहाँ पे क्रेशा मैडम बोल रही है, काफी लोग बोल रहे हैं अब मैं गांव में ही रहूंगा, अब मैं खेती बाड़ी करूंगा या कोई और काम करूंगा?
नहीं नहीं, ऐसा कुछ नहीं है। ये है कि थोड़ा डर का माहौल तो है, लॉकडाउन से थोड़ा डर का माहौल तो है हर जगह पे, मगर ये है कि लॉकडाउन जब खुल जाएगा, अच्छे से सब हो जाएगा सही साथ, तो कारीगर आएंगे, काम भी करेंगे, मजदूरी भी करेंगे। और बगैर आए मजदूरी करे हुए यहाँ रोजी रोटी की तलाश में यहाँ आएंगे तो कुछ ना कुछ तो करना ही पड़ेगा। गाँव में तो इतना कुछ नहीं है जो कर सके वो लोग, तो आना तो
अच्छा,
ही उन लोगों को, और काम भी करेंगे आके। ठीक है कि थोड़ा डर उनके अंदर भरा हुआ है कि डर उनको निकलना है बस। ये लॉकडाउन खुले तो उनको समझा के अच्छी तरीके से लेके साथ में आएंगे कारीगरों को, फिर से काम चालू करेंगे, फिर से कंपनी आपकी आगे बढ़ेगी।
ठीक है। एनीथिंग एल्स आलिया?
No, I think pretty much covered most of it. We were mostly concerned about how much the uncertainty of another month of the lockdown. How is that? Tawfiq bhai, अगर ये lockdown एक और महीने के लिए चलेगा, तो आपके मतलब what can you just ask him to say a little bit? Sorry, my Hindi is very poor.
अभी आपको लगता है ये लॉकडाउन एक महीने और अगर आगे बढ़े तो आपका क्या है उस पे outlook? Even I'm confused now, Alia. What do you want me to ask him
I want
exactly?
to know, are we prepared? How are we prepared for it, basically?
देखो
क्या
अभी
क्या
ऐसा तौफीक भाई
planning
लग रहा
होगी?
है कि एक और महीना आगे चलने वाला है, तो ये आप लोग समझ के बैठे हो वहाँ पे? Actually, he calls me almost daily to ask me when it's opening and when can they come back. So
Maybe he could share a little bit about the community of Garigars, like what's he heard, word on the street, how does the community feel? Are they well informed? Do they feel the government can do more? Fortunately, Tawfiq Bhai has yourself to work with, and you're having good communicado, but not many Garigars are in a similar position. They're just not knowing. Does he have any real-time stories to share about other Garigars that have had a worse experience or are left in the dark?
अच्छा, अब तौफीक भाई आप तो चलो हमारे साथ हो, पापा डोंट प्रीच के साथ हो, और हमारी भी बहुत मदद कर रहे हो कि आगे लोगों तक पैसे और खाना और राशन पहुंचा रहे हो, लेकिन सब जानना चाहते हैं कि और जो कारीगर हैं वहां पे जो शायद पापा डोंट प्रीच के साथ नहीं है या और दूसरी कंपनी के साथ नहीं है, जिनका काम छूट गया है या तो जिनको सैलरी पूरी नहीं मिल पा रही है, जिन तक हेल्प नहीं पहुंच पा रही है, आपको लग रहा है कि आपके वहाँ पे जो सरपंच हैं, जो गवर्नमेंट है, वो आपकी मदद कर रहे हैं? और क्या आपकी देखभाल आपको छोड़ के जो और लोग हैं गांव में और दूसरे कारीगर हैं, उन सब की देखरेख ठीक से हो रही है
और
कि वहाँ मुश्किल का माहौल है?
थोड़ा मुश्किल का माहौल है, ना के बराबर देखभाल हो रही है। इतनी कोई खास नहीं हो
अच्छा।
रही, ना के बराबर देखभाल हो रही और बहुत मुश्किल का माहौल है। आपसे जो मदद पहुंच रही है, जहां तक मैं कारीगरों का है, कारीगरों तक मदद आपकी पहुंचा रहा हूँ। जो घरों में जा जाके जो कारीगर लोग हैं वहां तक पहुंचा दे रहा हूँ। आपसे जो मदद आ रही है, और माहौल तो यहाँ ना के बराबर गवर्नमेंट मदद पहुंचा रही है बस।
तो जो लोग हमसे नहीं जुड़े हैं, जो लोगों के काम छूट गए हैं, या क्या ये लोग भी चाहते हैं बॉम्बे वापस आए, या ये वहीं पे कोई काम ढूंढ के वहीं रुकेंगे? आपने कहा हमारे कारीगर को तो
फिलहाल
आप
तो ये
मना
कोशिश कर
के
रहे
ले
हैं।
आओगे। हाँ।
जी। और हमारे
बाकी
कारीगर आएंगे और दूसरे जिनका काम छूट गया है तो वो भी डरे हुए हैं। ये है कि उनको भी कोशिश करके जब काम धंधा नहीं होगा तो उनसे आगे लेके आएंगे मुंबई के लिए। उनको भी कि चलो वहाँ काम करो चल के, तो दो पैसा पैदा करोगे, ये परेशानी दूर हो जाएगी, तो घर का खाना
तो
खर्चा चलेगा।
आप कोशिश करोगे कि जिन जिन का काम छूटा है उन कारीगरों को भी बॉम्बे में काम दिलवाने की कोशिश करोगे, ये कह रहे हो आप?
जी, पूरी पूरी कोशिश करेंगे हम यही कि जो कारीगर यहाँ पे बैठे हुए हैं, जैसे मजदूर हैं या हैंड वाले अपने कारीगर हैं, हैंड के या सिलाई मशीन वाले हैं, तो ये हमारे यही वो उनको अच्छी दिशा दिखाए और उनको अच्छी जगह पे लगाए काम पे।
ठीक है। एनीथिंग एल्स, सुकी?
No, I'd say we're good. Thank you, Tawfiq Bhai. Perhaps we can continue. Alia, we do have some questions that have popped up, but there's one related to Garigar. So somebody's just asked a question. It's actually Janvi Mehta, who said she absolutely loves your product range, and I think that's to both of you. Huge fan of your brands. Just wanted to ask one question. Why didn't you all talk about your Garigars previously? I would probably say that they and where did they suddenly come into the picture? Well, I could very easily answer that on your behalf, but perhaps you could just paint a picture as to why it's important to spotlight the work of the Garigars now more than ever.
So if I were to go first, I have always spoken about my karigars. If you do follow us and follow our stories, there are stories about our karigars all the time. How we're celebrating Diwali, how we're celebrating Eid. They're always there. I mean, they've not. It's not that we're spotlighting them now. Even if we were to go into our archives, we'd be able to show you a lot of the stories. And in fact, a lot of people message us, leave comments saying, why is your product so expensive? And I openly tell people that, please do visit us. We're in Lower Parel in Bombay, very accessible. That's where all the karigars and workshops are also located. Please come visit, walk in and meet our people. So it's always been a very open house for me, and karigars have always been very, very much a part of the family and the conversation as well of the brand. So
And I
yeah, that's my
honestly
bit.
support that in terms of what I've seen of Papa Don't Preach and how open you are about your brand. And perhaps I can just step in and say that Fashion Revolution has a campaign called #WhoMadeMyClothes. And that's to encourage more transparency and more dialogue between the fashion brand, the consumer, and also the people that are working on the brand. And often we get to see all the brilliant people that it takes to make one garment. And they respond by saying, I made your clothes. More and more brands year on year are doing this. And I think each brand has their own way of generating that dialogue. Perhaps yourself, Kresha, you can spotlight a little bit about how you approach that in your brand.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, literally our karigars and our artisans make 80% of our business. And like Shubhika mentioned, you can always see our team pictures and little Insta stories celebrating. But we've always made it a point to write about them. So whether you go to the website or you go to the Instagram page, you will always see, the spotlight thrown in terms of the art, in terms of how many man-hours it took, the kind of embroidery, the kind of materials, exactly the effort that went into it, the number of beads. We talk a lot about our third generation of artisans that we've had and that we've trained over the years. But we haven't put a spotlight on a particular person because that's just how we are as a brand. We like to talk about things in a more subtle way. It is just now because of the situation that we are actually highlighting faces, faces and names as we have done, with the stories. And that was a really fun way also for the Karigars to come and talk to us about their daily lives, things they love, things they hate. But if you go through our pages, go through our website, you will see that our artisans and our Karigars are actually the backbone of Kresha Bajaj as a label. Because of the kind of embroidery we do and because of the kind of detailing we do.
So we have a bunch of questions. I just want to loop back to the thought about what we were saying about paying certain wages and keeping certain safeguards, like what we were saying earlier, what Shubhika and I had discussed about, is it a union or is it about looking after the Medicare? What is it that we're getting? What is it that we're talking about when we say that, okay, we want to build this foundation, we want to build this base, we want to build the security blanket now that we've seen that, look, it's really on thin ice that we've all been operating. And I think that one of the things which always strikes me is, especially for people who make out of a city like Bombay, which is very expensive, Mumbai, and at the same time, what you guys are in the bridal market, which is super competitive, right? I mean, there's new designers coming up every day who are catering to this, right? So how, is the customer sensitive to your Karigars? I guess the thought that I want to sort of try and explore. Like, do you guys feel that in your, when people, because people always, in Bombay, you always have people talking about in fashion in general, in all our conversations, in sustainable fashion and everything, it's like, oh, but it's so expensive, oh, but these people probably have so much. Oh, but, these people are rich people, there is that myth, there is that belief that surrounds it. So if you can just
I think,
us, like, if
Alia,
I was to pay everyone fairly, how much more expensive is it going to get?
So I think that it has been very important for me to create products that I would be able to buy, So even if we do call it expensive, it has to make sense. It still has to be value for money, because when a person does wear us, he or she needs to feel like, okay, I made a good purchase. Having said that, I think when we do talk about sustainability, when we do talk about fashion's role in the kind of negative impact that it's had on, say, the workers or on even the environment, I think a more complete conversation needs to be had. And I think there is a lot of education that's lacking there in our customers, because on one hand they will message us saying that, are you guys sustainable and what are you guys doing for it, etc., etc., and in the same breath they'll say, but why are you so expensive, why don't you start an affordable line? So I think that because of the way information is kind of thrown out, and I feel that's where the role of somebody like Fashion Revolution gets even more important, is that there needs to be a very well-rounded conversation had on this topic. And that's why I tell people that come meet us, come see our Karigars, because I feel like people need to understand why something is worth what it is, because of the people who are employed at every stage, right from dyeing to hand stitching the buttons to hand stitching the buttonholes to like everything that we do is hand done almost, so it costs a lot of money. And then yes, we do want to pay our Karigars extremely well. We want them to work in Lower Parel, where it's next to the railway station, and it's 2 minutes walking for all of them, and it's connected to all parts of, they come from Mumbai, Virar, and places that are really far away. So we do keep all this in consideration, and that's how we decide to build a brand based on happy people who are making your happy clothes. But education is lacking. People do negotiate, people do see fashion as evil, and I feel that has a lot to do with the way information is being put out there and the way information is being consumed. I feel that there is a big gap, and there's a lot of education required there. In fact, with me, there are a lot of aunties who come and say, because we don't do the traditional hand embroidery. Like you'll see Kresha's lehenga and you'll be like, "ठीक है, ये this is hand embroidery," but aunties will be like, ये तो hand embroidery भी नहीं है, And then we have to explain that hand embroidery, like this flower that's put there, although it's like jutting out, it's been hand embroidered, So we have to really explain. So definitely, I feel that there's a big gap there, and it's not only because of the competition that we have here, because it's just simply because there is a lack of awareness and education on this subject.
Yeah,
Yes,
definitely. I think that's one, to be very honest, that's one of my most asked questions, that, oh, your lehengas cost lakhs, or oh, you're so expensive, or we don't understand. And I've had aunties come and say, oh, ispe to sona laga hai, or, what is on this? But our pieces take a lot of time to create, an average bridal lehenga takes anywhere between 3 months to 6 months. If we're looking at a love story lehenga and it's really intricate, it can go up to 11 months just in embroidery alone. And apart from this, each piece is really created with utmost care. And with perfection, and the design process alone takes months on end to come up with. And I mean, if you look at each piece has a name, each piece has a story. It's literally like a birth. It's their artwork, and they're treated like that, and we make only one of each. Each piece is displayed during the collection. And also talking a little bit about the collections and how many collections we really make it a point to only release 1 or 2 collections in a year.
Yeah.
And this is because of the kind of effort that goes into making these pieces. It takes us 6 months just to release a 35-piece collection. And apart from this, I think it's really important that we don't just aimlessly create. And this is one of the main reasons where we've completely cut off the fashion calendar or the fashion schedule of having, spring, summer, autumn, winter. That it's just become like a machine, and that is something we don't want to do. So there's been a year where we've not released a collection as well. And that another reason for that is also to eliminate waste. You don't want to just be creating pieces and creating collections just because you have to. And these pieces are investment pieces. They will last you years, if not generations. So that is the kind of karigari, the work, the detailing, the quality of the materials, the fabric. We're all using pure silks, pure materials, the highest quality of beading, the highest quality of Swarovski crystals. So I think that's what a person really needs to keep in mind to understand what this piece is. At the end of the day, it's a piece of art. Yeah.
I think I read something very interesting that said that fashion used to be art, but what fashion has become now is just boredom. You're bored, you want next. And I think that's what pushes us, people like me and Kresha, to kind of keep investing all our energies in trying to create pieces of beauty, and to just have people recognize that we're trying to create art, and we're not just trying to create pieces that you probably get bored of or want to do away with or just consume. And you want to create pieces that people want to give to their sister when she's getting married, or the daughter, or probably.
So, Alia, at this point, could I just bring up one question that's popped up?
Sure. I said 2 that looked fun, but yeah, go for it.
And just so this week, I mean, Kresha and Shubhika, I'm not sure if you followed, but the lead designer, the creative director from Gucci, Alessandro Michel, announced that the brand is permanently abandoning the traditional fashion calendar as they rethink how it operates in the light of COVID-19. And he actually rolled out notes from the silence, he called them, on his Instagram.
Yes.
And in a nutshell, he's abandoning the worn out ritual of seasonalities and shows. I would love to know your thoughts on that, both of you. And coming to Branjal Padil's question of how do you think the fashion industry is going to shift after the pandemic? And what change do you expect in consumer behavior? So Branjal, you can see how Gucci has responded to the COVID-19 pandemic. And personally, for your brands, perhaps you might have something you'd like to share on these points.
So I think like Kresha said before, so similarly, we also don't follow any fashion calendars. We genuinely as a team, even when we do release collections, because we realize that our primary platform for even sales or to reach out to our people is Instagram. And Instagram does service boredom. It does require you to keep the person engaged. So what we do is that when we come out with about 4 collections, capsule collections, but only with 12 pieces or 15 pieces, and that's it. And a lot of our work that we do, all the collections have 1 sample piece and just 2 pieces made in that we send to stores. So in terms of like following fashion calendars, we never did. We were very guilty of not doing that. You know, fashion weeks would come and go, but we would still just be there, you know, doing it at our speed, doing it at our time. And we didn't really do runway shows. I don't think even Kresha does them. So instead we just focus on how best to kind of display our art through shoots. And you know, just getting the concept, the story, which is very important, and you know, being able to capture the embroidery, the fabric, and all of that through pictures, and using Instagram as our primary medium. So we were, I think, naturally inclined to being a little better to the environment and the world in that sense. But I do agree that nobody can produce art at that speed, you know, no matter how big your team is, no matter how many creative people are working on it. After a point, it will diminish the quality, the beauty, the aesthetic, the wow. You know, why would somebody want to buy you at that price and then feel like they need to preserve you if you're going to put out something that's going to make that look old after 3 months? So I think that kind of respect has to be given to your own art, your own previous collections, that you give that space and time. If a person is investing a lakh in your lehenga, you at least give him 6 months or 9 months before you kind of say, oh, that's the old collection, you know. And in India, I do want to highlight that people are not so crazy about what's new and what's old, and it doesn't happen. You know, some of our bestsellers become bestsellers after a year and a half, and we're just like, what? Like, they want that, and we're surprised. So I feel like it's okay. I think in India we still have things under control. Kresha.
Yeah, I actually read the article as well, and I had a brief conversation about it in a live that I did yesterday, and I think it's amazing. You know, and this is something, like I mentioned, we have been following because it stops people aimlessly creating just because there's a rule or a schedule. And at the end of the day, we're all creative people, you know, whether it's us as a designer, whether it's our team, whether it's our carigars, we're all artisans, and you can never rush art. So, you know, it's always been important to take time, create each piece, and really ensure that when it is created or when it's launched doesn't really matter. There have been times where, you know, in this collection, actually, Aquapora, which was my underwater inspired collection, I launched a piece which I had created like around my wedding time, and I thought I would wear for my Sangeet. You know, so I think the goal is to just create timeless fashion that doesn't follow a trend, that doesn't follow a certain, you know, weather or the season, and you know, things like that. And that again comes back to investment pieces. And you mentioned about what, you know, the future or how this situation is going to change fashion or shopping patterns. And I really feel that people are going to be more conscious about what they're buying, and they are going to, you know, stop frivolous purchases and fast fashion, and really, you know, really think if it's something that you need in your closet and something that's not going to last you too long. And I really expect, and we can also see signs of this, you know, with China, and also with so many luxury brands actually raising their prices this year, that the luxury market, is actually going to grow through this crisis.
So if I may, what I do think the future of fashion, I think when we speak about that pertaining to India, we have to be very India specific, because we have a very different dynamic from the rest of the world, because we have a very, 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 we're lucky to have the size of the population that we do, a very young population. We do not depend on international buyers coming in. So, we cannot really follow what a Chanel or a Gucci is doing blindly here. Because we are lucky to have, and even our market, we do cater to Indians specifically when we talk about weddings and occasion wear. Although that has been hit pretty badly now, but I do feel the future of Indian fashion is pretty safe. As long as we respect the fact that the consumer is in recession and is going to be for some time, and we ensure that we make in India. It is very important. I don't think it's just a slogan, but it is the reality that we don't chase, cheaper art. We do not chase cheaper craftsmanship. We do not do that, and we really capitalize on that, and we capitalize on what we have sitting with us, and we treat that well, and we create pieces, and we educate people that this is what you're paying for, and we're actually honest about it, and we're 100% accountable for what we are putting out there. I think we will be fine. And people will want to buy a lot more separates. And I also do think, somebody is messaging, what about young brands and stuff like that? I want to tell them that, even the wedding sizes may become smaller now, 50 people, in one, spot. The pictures are still going to hold a lot of value, which means the bride will want to look like a bride. Instagram is still very much there, and you really definitely want really beautiful pictures. So maybe functions may reduce, but the emphasis on beautiful clothing, detailed clothing with beautiful craftsmanship that highlights the person wearing it and the personality of the person wearing it, because at the end of it, fashion is about expressing your individual expression. If you see a bride wearing a Papa Don't Preach versus a bride wearing Kresha, you'll instantly know who she is and who she wants to be. It's that important, fashion. So it's not going to get replaced because of this. It's just we have to be very respectful to the people who are buying it and what we're giving them responsibly.
Super. So I'm just going to jump into some of the questions that we are getting from our participants. Reverse migration. Have you ever considered letting your karigars work from home, so to speak? As in, could Tawfiq Bhai be making pieces for you right now, sitting, in Rasulabad?
Kresha, do you want to answer that?
Yeah, sure. Actually, when the lockdown started, that was one of the first things we thought about. So we tried to, give all our karigars things that they could do from home, like making tassels, making latkans. There's a lot of, a lot of different things they can do from home. But at the end of the day, the main work happens on a cart. The cart is, what can I call it? Basically, yeah, the tool or
12
the
feet.
yeah, on which the cloth is added and the work is done. And a lot of them are not able to have a cart at home. So we would definitely, and we would definitely be open to try and give them as much as they can do within home. We've had some amazing karigars from the menswear label, and they, we've managed to get some machines to them, and they're really enterprising. Like one of my most junior karigar has started creating a swatch book, and he was really excited, and he spoke about this in one of the videos, where we try to ask them questions, and he's creating a swatch book with like quilting and smocking and different techniques. So it's great, and few things can be done, but as a whole, and especially with bridal, it's not possible to be able to assign that much work from home for the karigars. But that being said, also a lot of them live together. So I have my master and a bunch of karigars who live opposite me in the house, and we have I'm on a live. Sorry, someone walked in. And you know, a lot of them live together. So we've been trying to get machines to some of their houses, and you know, people who can operate carts in their houses as well. Get it? Sorry, I'm very sorry. I have people walking in. I think they've forgotten I
Okay.
have to live. So yeah, sorry. That's as much as they can do from home. But of course,
Yeah.
it'll be something that we're open to. I think the whole world is trying to figure out how to incorporate work from home, because we've all realized that it is, you know, it is productive, and we have been able to get really good results with the team from them working at home. So it's definitely, you know, an option to consider.
So yeah, so to this I want to say that Alia, again, my point on education becomes really important, because I feel like if we are deciding on, you know, making remote working a reality, then the communication has to be really, really precise. For that, the terminology that is used, you know, needs to be in place. They need to be skilled in that particular, you know, in and every brand is different, right? You see the two embroideries that we do, it's very different. A person who works for me may not be able to work for Kresha. So I think if definitely the person will have to be trained under you. If we are talking about creating couture pieces, where we're saying investment pieces that people can kind of keep for as long as they can, they will have to go through a training process and then probably, you know, go into their villages and train people. But I think training and education will become very, very important if we want to even explore an option of remote working, because I have tried that, and simply because the infrastructure also doesn't allow them to very quickly move back and forth. You know, we were trying to work with somebody from Patna. The infrastructure right now is not very supportive in India, you know, for these kind of exchanges to happen at the speed at which we need it to. And when I say speed, I don't mean hours. I mean, it takes about 15 days for that guy to go back and come back to me with any kind of news. And that's a lot of time lost. So if there are any corrections we need to do as well, you know, so if there's education training, then I feel like maybe not immediately, but sometime in the future, it can be a possibility, yes.
No. Yeah, and just for the participants who are listening, a couple of other reports we've had is, especially during lockdown, there has not been any free movement. So it has, you know, it has almost been impossible for people, because it was an unprepared thing. So it was not possible to initiate it in that fashion.
Yes.
Because
Yes.
it was getting people home, but getting people home with work to do, you know, it was just too quick. It was not possible for anyone to be prepared. One other thing we have been asked, before I want to get to our final question, which is the one more thing we were asked in the middle, is that since you girls make these beautiful statement pieces, have you ever considered like a rent and lease model, like renting out a piece instead of selling it?
So we have, you know, in the past tied up with certain companies that do that, but we were only putting very, very old collections on that, say probably 3-4 years old, not even seasons old. But that is simply because, again, when I say, you know, somebody who buys from you and is paying that price, and you know, and mostly these are brides who are buying from us, you know, so we do not want them to tomorrow feel that, you know, somebody else rented it. You know, of course, if the business becomes bigger, right now we're still pretty compact, we're pretty small, we don't have that much inventory either. If it does become bigger in terms of size and in terms of volume creation, then it can be explored. But at this point, where we're more focused on making bespoke you know, clothing and made to measure, made to order, at this point it would, I feel, be a kind of a disservice to the bride who's actually investing in a couture piece. So not at this point, not the current seasons, no, but we have done that with our old collections in the past.
Kasha,
Like,
And for us, it's something that we haven't done. And also, to be really honest, it's not something that we are considering. As I mentioned, that you know, we have one store. It's a flagship store. Everything happens from there. We meet every single client, every single bride, and 80% of the time, the outfits are completely customized to them. And if anyone has come to the store, anyone's a bride, you would know that we make you try on a bunch of different colors, a bunch of different things. When a client says, I don't want to try this, that's exactly what we encourage them to try, because we really try to focus on color theory. What works with your skin tone, what works with your undertone, what works with your body type, things that you want to highlight, things that you want to conceal. So each outfit is literally made like a glove for a person. And we're very particular about the fit and the detail of it. So to be able to rent these outfits, I think if I saw an outfit that was ill-fitted, it would break my heart. So renting is something that we are not looking at currently, and we haven't even done in the past.
I think people just want to try a little bit of each of your outfits. So yeah. Finally, I want to just bring it back to the idea that I know both of you were discussing before lockdown, which is the School for Karigars. One of the questions we have is, what can future designers do to make others aware of Karigars and the work that is done by Karigars? And I think from what you said, it's also preserving the legacy. And you guys were telling me a little bit about that thought. So if you can just get into that vision that you have.
So I think this is twofold. One is that how do you actually encourage karigars to preserve this art and teach, as Tawfiq Bhai said, it's only because I was sitting in front of him that he said, I will teach my kids. But I feel like they all feel they want to, teach their kids computers. It's still a fad, they want to put them in jobs that are slightly more secure, because this is a lot of hard work. It's backbreaking. You sit on the carts, you're bent over for hours, It's not easy, both physically, mentally. So I think what young designers do need to do is take on a responsibility for encouraging and making, there was something that I read, where everybody's calling the people who are servicing us at grocery stores, or even the people who are working and manufacturing clothes, gloves, things like that, they're calling them retail heroes. But fact is, they aren't heroes. They're there every day because they don't have any other way to earn their daily livelihood, and they literally just need the money. So when you do call your karigars your heroes, it's a hashtag we use, zero without our heroes, because we literally are zero without them. I wouldn't know how to embroider one flower without them onto the lehenga. So we have to understand, when we call them a hero, we're calling them a hero for the right reasons, that they're doing the job that they're doing because they love to do it, because there are friendships in the workplace that they come into. I will be putting up more videos of these karigars who talk about just, he's my best friend. And I find that so sweet and heartwarming that, they're coming there because of the people they're working with, and they're coming there for the people they're working with. And that's how anybody's work environment should be, not just for millennials, but for, everybody who's working. And that's why they're heroes, because they're creating beautiful work, and that's it. Not because they're risking their lives, not because there's nothing else, no other option. So I think it's our responsibility as designers to kind of give them that respect and tell them, listen, I'm there for you, and I'm there for your future generation. And if shit hits the roof, I'm still going to try to do whatever is in my capacity to kind of help you out. So that's one. And the second is that we have Instagram. It's still really, really extremely powerful. This campaign that has been a success, even Kesha will tell you, it's largely only because of Instagram. And I don't know what we would have done without it, right? So talk about the work, talk about the fabrics being used, talk about why you're using it and what kind of artwork you're doing. And I think that kind of education has to go out, and not just, ye to main aapko aadhe price mein bana dungi. I understand everybody's doing it because everybody is surviving here. Okay, so you cannot really blame anybody. But if we are just responsible, we are not responsible for the world. We're just responsible for our own individual actions. And if we take that kind of accountability on, I think a lot of things will fall into place.
Before you wrap up, Alia, thank you for that, Shubhika and Kresha. I just wanted to come back. I just wanted to the purse that's all the profits of that purse that people can purchase online is going to the Care for Karigars campaign, correct? And it's still available. And it's still available.
There's a purse and there's a cape.
a cape
Yeah.
as well. Correct.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
both the links from Kresha and Papa Don't Preach will also be shared on our Instagram stories on Fashion Revolution India. And it would be great if you repost how people can collect, people can purchase that person. Maybe just refresh them that it's not just about the fundraising that's going to the Karigars, but it means that it's enabling people to continue working during this time.
Right. Yes.
Yeah. So, so just to get back to the thought on the school also, I think I wanted to really kind of dig into that a little bit. Sorry, Suks, I was just wanted to just, this was something that I know it's lurking in their minds. So if you girls could just,
Kresha's baby.
yeah. Because I think the question from the audience about what can we really do, for me, it's, we have fashion design schools, so we don't have Karigari design institutes, basically.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. We need that. Kresha?
Yeah, so basically in terms of, you want to know more about the school that we...
Yeah, I want to know about your vision about how this Karigari can be preserved and how future designers can, do a better job of making sure Karigars get their due and ensure that there's a future for Karigari in our country, because it's also part of our heritage and, it is an art.
So basically the idea is just to train Karigars in as many different crafts as there are possible. And I'll tell you how this started with me. The challenge was I had a lot of Karigars coming in, they have such a small community, word of mouth travels. There are times where we get like 20 calls on the landline saying that, I'm a Karigar, I heard about you, can you come? And the way we work is we have a 1.5-month training program within the company before a Karigar can sit on a client piece or on any piece, because we're constantly making samples and we're constantly, trying to create different kinds of embroidery. The last season specifically, trying to recreate the whole underwater world, on a garment. And when they were sitting through that training process, we noticed that out of 10, maybe 1 or 2 would actually be able to continue doing the kind of work and the kind of detailing that we want on the lehenga. And that's when we realized that there might be enough karigars, or there might be a big community of karigars, the kind of work they're doing, and they call it chutta kaam. Means I don't know how to explain it, but they call it chutta kaam because they're so used to just taking these massive, like just sequences and doing everything in sequences without using kardana, beading, different kind of materials and embroideries. And that was when it was like, there are people and they are doing the craft and they're doing it for many people and they're doing it, but they have really lost touch with Ari and Zardozi. And these are two techniques of embroidery. Zardozi is when you use the needle, and Ari is when you use the bigger needle and you use the bottom of your hand in order to do the embroidery. And that's when it was like, I'm sure embroidery is going to be there, but that kind of work is slowly dying. That quality of work is slowly dying. If you probably dig into your closet and if you have any embroidered piece from your mom or your grandmom or anyone in the family, and you see that detail and you try and pick up something today with the same kind of work, you will see the difference in the embroidery. When I was trying to find someone to do badla work or this specific kind of Lucknowi work, it was impossible. There used to be this huge group of women who actually used to do badla work in their house, and you don't find any of them anymore in Bombay and in so many other cities as well. So that's what that was my plan, and I'm sure Shubhika agrees, but that's what I think we primarily want to do is continue the craft that is already there and try and revive some heritage crafts that have started dying. And I think it's really important for people to support, handmade, to support pieces that have karigari, to really move away from fast fashion and pieces that only last you through a few washes. You rather not buy those 5 pieces and invest in something that will really last you, a long time, and we really need to ensure that the art forms is revived, spread awareness in whatever way that we can about handcrafted items, because they really need to be given their due respect. Not just the items, but also the artisans should be, should get the recognition they deserve for their skills.
Yeah. Like you said, Alia, I mean, in fashion schools, fashion is taught, but embroideries aren't. So I feel even if schools can give a lot more emphasis on the students as well learning this work, they will hence be able to help people like us who are trying to run schools for karigars. So I feel it's an entire chain. Everybody has to kind of take responsibility and realize that it needs to be taught as a subject.
Yeah. I mean, it's such a competitive advantage if you look at it, I mean, from a global perspective. And this is something that we discussed early on as well, like the diversity of karigari in India is, it goes beyond any other part of any other place in the world.
Yeah.
We don't have this legacy anywhere else. This diversity, the legacy. And we also talk to weavers, so we have extra grief because we know that the karigari is dying and weaving is dying. So, but these are very important things that we have to recognize and be proud of. And that is unique to Fashion Revolution India, because we have this capital, this social history with us. So thank you so much for coming on, sharing the story. The fundraiser is still open. Please, everybody, you can purchase a lovely piece made by these lovely women. You can go online, go to their Instagrams, go to their websites, see what you want to add to your wardrobe. You can share it with your friends and do your own, every year a friend of yours, a different friend can have it. And that way, we can share the happiness. We are going to wrap up this edition. Thank you so much.
Sorry, I just saw a question that I would like to answer.
Okay, please go for it.
Really quickly, I think someone mentioned, and what about the placements after the course is done? That is really important, and that is definitely something, that we would do. In fact, even now, and I mentioned that, we do a 1.5 month training to see what karigars can actually do, the quality of work that we want. Whichever karigars are not able to keep up with that, we place them immediately. So in January, we actually had 17 karigars that we placed, and they all got, a job at an export house. And through the community and through the karigar circle that we have, we ensure that every single karigar gets placed. That's something I wanted to mention, because that is one of the most important things, to make sure that they have something to go to after they get this training.
Got it. So the export houses are really the ones who can give the security and pick up people with these skills at the moment. Got it. Okay. So good. Okay, wonderful. So let's wrap up the session. Thank you so much, guys. It's been 1 hour, 15 minutes. Thank you so much. It was
Thank you, Alia.
Thank you, Taufik Bhai. Thank you so much. Shubhika, will you please thank him on everybody's behalf?
Taufik Bhai, thank you. आपने पूरे इतने ध्यान से बैठे रहे, इतनी 1 घंटे के ऊपर चली गई ये कॉल, आप शांति से बैठ रहे, बहुत अच्छा लगा आप हमारे बीच में थे, और सब लोग बहुत खुश हुए आपसे बात करके, और सब आपको अपनी बेस्ट विशेस भेजते हैं और सपोर्ट करना चाहते हैं इस टॉक के बाद।
हमको भी बहुत अच्छा लगा आप लोगों से बात करके, बहुत खुशी हुई। आप लोगों का सबको थैंक यू मेरी तरफ से, बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया। सबका सपोर्ट मुझे मिला है, और ऐसे आगे और सपोर्ट मिलेगा तो मैं कारीगरों की और हेल्प कर पाऊंगा।
Very good. Okay. Thank you, Taufik Bhai.
Thank you all. We will be sharing this video on our Fashion Revolution India YouTube page next week. So if anybody wants to catch up, we'll share the link to that in Insta stories. Thank you all. Thank you, Alia, for spearheading and producing the series of Shift. Thank you, Kresha Bajaj. Thank you, Shubhika. Thank you, Taufik Bhai. Thank you to all our participants. And thank you. Have a wonderful evening, everybody. All the best.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for having us.
Everyone. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.